What if the heroes lost? Again and again and again. What if you were tasked with achieving an impossible victory, but you had all the time in the world to do it? The only caveat is, every night at midnight, you die. This is Toki Village, and it has been stuck in a time loop for the past 2 years. Anyone who enters it gets trapped too, and no one has figured out how to break this curse yet. Could you? Would you be able to save this village? Would you even be able to save yourself? My name is Gabriel Galway, this is The Ugly Goblin, and I've been DMing for 15 years. And I have always been obsessed with the concept of time travel and have relished in trying to incorporate it into as many of my D&D games as possible. I've run a few mini D&D campaigns solely based around the concept of time travel, but this adventure that I'm going to share with you today is possibly my favorite, if not my favorite D&D adventure that I have ever run, my favorite D&D experience I have ever had. And this may look like quite an unassuming adventure at first glance, being set in a very tranquil and peaceful Ghibli-inspired town. But what I love about it is its unassuming nature. A perfectly tranquil town paired with a concept of ever-looping death. Despite the fact that the people of Toki Village meet their end every single day, they still wake up the next morning with smiles on their faces, eager to make the most of this life that they've been given. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's take a step back for a minute and actually talk about why I'm making this adventure in the first place. So the wonderful couple over at Mystic Arts has created this really lovely D&D YouTuber event called Dungeon Jam, where this year we've been tasked with creating a 5-room dungeon. You're going to see a bunch of us trying to tackle this task, and if you want to see more, I'm going to link the playlist down in the description below. So what is a 5-room dungeon? If you don't know, it's a really handy little concept for preparing any D&D session or a TTRPG session. So whenever you're preparing a session or an adventure or what have you, you try to create 5 different rooms for your dungeon. And each one of these rooms follows a particular premise. So the first room is your guardian or your entrance to the dungeon. This is your opening act. This is how you get into the story. Some sort of puzzle or roleplay challenge usually follows up with that in the room number 2. You then follow that up with a trick or a setback. And then all of these lead to room number 4, which is your climax. This is your epic battle against the BBEG or whatever satisfying conclusion or conflict you want to come up with. And then finally, in room number 5, you end with a twist or some sort of revelation or simply a nice wholesome conclusion. And so by working with this kind of format, you can essentially plan for any type of session and get all your notes down in a single page of just bullet points. So my brief for this Dungeon Jam was to create a 5-room dungeon, but I wanted to take a step back and come up with something a little more abstract just to show off how this method can be used for anything. So I asked myself, what is a room but an area of space? And what concept is intrinsically connected to space, time? And what is a dungeon but a place to get trapped in? And so I've come up with 5 moments in time that your players are locked in, repeatedly repeating again and again. And I've used this 5-room structure to break down how you would run this specific adventure. And so this dungeon is not made out of bricks and mortar, it does not have walls, instead it has been fabricated by time itself, ever repeating in a constant loop. This adventure is incredibly roleplay heavy and involves a lot of unconventional puzzle solving, and when encounters do happen, they are deadly and will usually result in the party's deaths. But death is not the end in this adventure. Instead, when the whole party dies, eventually, inevitably, they're all reset back at the start of the day and have to progress through this dungeon again. Now, some of you may be listening to this and think it might sound like quite a tedious process, like what happens if one party member dies and so on. But it works really well, I promise you. If you can follow the tips that I'm going to give you with this video, then you can run this just as well as I have and possibly have one of the greatest D&D experiences you have ever had. It was for me the best D&D experience I have ever had. See, the beauty with this adventure is you no longer have to hold back as a DM. You no longer have to pull your punches. You can start bringing out your CR 15 monsters and throw them at a party of level 6 players, and it doesn't really matter. It's up to the party to figure out how to deal with these impossible threats. Every challenge you throw at the party, every death they experience, only enriches the story further. And because the players are stuck in this endless time loop and will always end up back in the town, they're also set to one location, so you don't need to have many maps planned. If they go off the rails in a completely different direction, go to another town, eventually, come the next day, come midnight, they will still die and they will still wake up back at the town. I mean, at one stage, I've taken players off to the side, thrown them off cliffs, stomped their heads in, all in areas where no one has heard their screams. But no, there is also still some restraint needed for this game, obviously, but it is a little fun to be able to just cut loose a bit on your players. And I think for players too, it's kind of nice to not have as many consequences for their actions. They can experiment more. They have more freedom to try out new and daring things that maybe they wouldn't have with that fear of death over their heads. But let me walk you through this adventure, show you some tips and tricks that I've learned from running it, so that you can get the most out of this experience. So let's start with the lore. So as mentioned, this adventure is set in the peaceful farming village of Toki, which is under the influence of a terrible spell. All who enter this village are forced to relive the same day for all eternity. Should you die or fall asleep, you will reawaken the same day in the same town. This is honestly the perfect little town to slot in there as your players are traveling from A and B in your main campaign, or you can simply run this as a single campaign, maybe 5 or 6 sessions. You can run it over the period of a single month or two, depending on time and scheduling and all that, but it's a really nice bite-sized adventure to throw at your players. And also the way I've designed it, I've tried to keep it as open as possible so that you can insert it into almost any TTRPG at any level. But more on that later. And as I mentioned already, this has a very strong focus on roleplay as well as unconventional puzzle solving, and of course, the combat encounters are incredibly rare but incredibly deadly when they do happen. But I'm just saying this again so that you as a DM can inform your players of this before the game even begins. Let them know what the premise is so they can set their characters up accordingly. Let them know too that this may have low-key elements of horror, but overall, on the surface, it's going to have a real Ghibli-esque vibe. More so like, Totoro on the surface with Princess Mononoke in the kind of low undercurrents. Also, I'll touch on this again later, but I've filled this entire adventure with over 20 NPCs, all of which you can find in the document, all little descriptions and everything on each one of them, but I haven't included any maps or tokens for them. And so if you are looking for a bunch of flawless maps and a beautiful collection of tokens, then this video sponsor, Cheipeku, has you covered. Now I'm sure like 90% of you out there are familiar with Cheipeku, the best map makers, the best TTRPG map makers out there, in my own humble opinion and the opinion of like everyone else. Well, not only have they released a way to get a truckload of customizable tokens to pair artistically with their incredible maps, but you can now subscribe to Cheipeku maps and scenes over on their website at cheipeku.com. which for me has been an invaluable way for me just to scroll through all the maps that I have purchased from them and just get quick visuals so I can look them up on my computer and pop them into my games. With Cheipeku's new complete fantasy bundle, you gain access to all of their maps, scenes, and tokens. So that's 3 packages for the price of 2 for $50. And you might be thinking, okay, like, what do I get with all that though? Like you say, all of their assets, like how much is that? 6,000. Over 6,000.
It's
6,000!
What?
6,000! And that is just their maps alone. And also these high-res maps that you're getting, there's also like 20 variations per map, which also include animated versions. So your maps can move. I've used this in games. It's insane. It's so cool. And all of this is continuously being added to every single week. All of the content made by Cheipeku is also VTT ready to be instantly dropped into any of your games. And once you go down the Cheipeku route, I tell you, you can't go back. It is life-changing as a DM. So use my link in the description below so they can know who sent you, and thank you so much Cheipeku for sponsoring this video. Genuinely, it is so exciting to me and it's so wonderful to me to be able to have sponsors who I truly believe in. And so going back to this adventure, I think it is actually perfectly okay too for your players to know they are going into a game that has a time loop. If that is something that comes up, if you want to share that, I think it's perfectly okay. Like, we all go to see these classic time travel movies or time travel series knowing full well what the premise is, but we want to know how it's going to play out, what the twists are going to be along the way. It's never like a massive spoiler when time travel is just thrown into the movie. Usually we always know that beforehand, and to me personally, I find it more interesting when I know it's a time travel movie and I'm kind of looking for all those moments that are going to end up repeating later down the line. It's kind of cool and impressive to watch the DM navigate all these moving pieces again and again. But obviously you can keep this a secret, and that's perfectly fine, and I think it's a really cool reveal when come the second day, when the day finally repeats itself, that the players start to figure this out. But also, don't leave it too long, and if the players are starting to ask, don't be too secretive about it. Let them know that, yeah, this is a time loop game and the days are going to continue repeating. Feel free to share that information with your players, because I think it only enriches the story and further excites the whole gang. My advice to you is that by the time they reach the Harvest Festival, the second time round, let them know that this is a time loop. So speaking of, this Harvest Festival, yes, is held by the people of Toki Village once a year. And it's to honor the creator, a local spirit of good fortune, and to thank them for the good harvest. But one year, the villagers weren't delivered a wonderful, bountiful harvest for the Harvest Festival. Instead, they were delivered a blight, and many of the villagers died. And after that, all the resentful surviving villagers, one by one in secret, went to this shrine and defiled it. And the very next year, the villagers had the most bountiful harvest they have ever had. They partied, they enjoyed the new food, but then the next day, their fields were full again. It was like some sort of miracle. They had all the food they could ever ask for. But soon, the villagers realized the seasons never changed. Any changes they made to the town to themselves was all undone come the next morning. And they always woke up in the same bed, in the same place, every morning, to repeat the same day over and over and over again. And it didn't take long for the villagers to go mad, realizing there's no consequences to their actions. A dark year fell over the village as every sin under the sun was committed here. But it didn't take long for the villagers to even tire of that. And after a while, they just grew so numb and no longer knew how to live, how to move on, how to continue moving forward. It was then that Farmer Dan Miller came up with the solution of repeating the exact same actions every single day. But he asked that each of them to take note of one new thing that they would notice each day and to cherish it. Some saw this as an excellent way to figure out some sort of solution as to what is causing the time loop. By keeping variables as low as possible, anytime there was some sort of extraordinary event, that would be highlighted and they can start to research it. The majority of the people simply loved it because it gave them some way to retain their sanity, something to keep doing again and again, and every now and then they could pick and choose one small little change to make throughout the day to make that day a little more perfect. And so they went about their lives repeating the same actions every day, and somehow it made things easier for everyone. They let go of what tomorrow would bring and would focus on each moment and every moment that was happening now and really, truly appreciate what they had. And it is after these 2 years that your party finally arrive at the village. But what the members of this town have not yet realized is that repeating the same acts over and over again, becoming more and more monotonous, is all part of the spell's effect. The spell that is over this town has a master plan to slowly wear down the wills of each member here, of each villager, slowly eroding their free will. And finally, when that last ounce of their free will disappears, they wander off into the forests and become puppets for the great Fae that has been puppeteering them all along. And the day the party finally arrive is the day that actually all of these people start to lose themselves. And one by one person every night goes up to that old shrine that they once defiled and disappears, never to return. They don't go up here to defile the shrine, instead they're consumed by it. And this adds a much needed timer to this adventure. All of a sudden, they don't have an infinite amount of days to save everyone. One by one, these villagers will start to go missing, and if the players take too long, there's not going to be a village to save. Not only does this add a sense of urgency, but it also makes this adventure more and more personal the more the players get to know these villagers. As they do each day, get to learn them, their different routines, but then start to lose them one by one. Each loss is going to feel even more heavier than the last. This adventure should open bright and wholesome and hopeful, but as each day passes, allow the tones to naturally get darker as the players delve deeper into this 5-room dungeon. So I've broken this adventure down into 5 easy steps, 5 rooms based on the 5-room dungeon technique. And this should hopefully make it a little more digestible for you, easier to break it down, and each of these rooms can technically kind of be a single session, a single 3 to 4 hour session. But keep in mind that this session can start off a little slow, because especially if your players don't know that this is a time loop, this is just going to be a lot of wholesome roleplay in the town, getting to know the townsfolk and things. But don't be afraid to really lean into that, to just make it a very wholesome session and allow them to roleplay, allow them to get to know people. I added a villain in here amongst all the wholesome stuff to really kind of mix it up for my players. But there's also no need to do this either, because this is going to be a wholesome moment and wholesome memories that the players are going to make and look back on later in this adventure and wish they were back enjoying those happier days. Or single day, technically, I guess. But it's going to be even more sad when they realize they can never go back to that. So our first room is the entrance. This is the first session when the players arrive at Toki Village and move into the spell weave that is over this entire village. And anyone who casts Detect Magic or has True Sight will actually be able to see the golden threads that make up the weave of this spell. These golden threads are attached to everything in a spider web-like structure, and anyone who touches off one of these golden strings has it immediately attach them, and they continue on with a new golden string attach them, and anyone else they touch, anyone else who touches their golden string gets a new one, and this town is progressively getting more and more tangled in this web. And there's no way to destroy these threads either unless you destroy their creator or reason with them. Have your players live out this first ordinary day, getting to know the townsfolk and then finally taking part in the harvest festival that evening, and it'll all come to a beautiful conclusion with some lovely old fireworks, only to have the party watch everyone brutally slaughtered by some unknown source that cuts them all to ribbons, and the players are then soon to follow. Take your time as a DM to play out this scene. Have one of your players look down and see their fingers suddenly fall off their body. Have another player look around and see their whole world spin upside down suddenly. Have another player watch that player and see it's actually caused by their head falling off their shoulders. Let the players know, come the end of this day, that they have all died. For DMs, this is a little secret note, so if your players skip past this, but essentially, this is all caused by those golden strings previously mentioned, all suddenly contracting and tightening up, immediately slicing everyone and everything to ribbons. And then conclude this moment with a song of your choice. I recommend Outer Wilds. It's a perfect song for this moment. And I recommend playing this song every day a new dawn starts in the village of Toki. This adds to that repeated feeling, like this is time repeating itself again and again. I actually went a few steps further and made a whole playlist for different hours of the day that different things are happening and played those at certain intervals throughout each game that we played. But soon you'll develop a ritual. The players will sit down, a new game will start, and the new dawn will begin as you play your selected song. Room 2, or day 2, is the puzzle. The players now know they are in a time loop and they need to figure out how to break out of it. The players wake up to repeat the previous day's events, and very soon they will see that something is off. If they haven't figured out they are already in a time loop, they soon will. It's at this moment, as the first hour passes, you as a DM will put down a marker on the table. This can be either a D12 or you can simply write the current time on the game board. And every time an hour passes, you change that dice or change that time. And now the village is truly open to your players. And for this part, this is where my help is quite limited. I can't predict everything your players should do or will do. Neither will you be able to do that necessarily, but only you will be able to react to what they're doing. But what I have done to help you along in the document that I'll talk about later, there is an entire timetable made up for every single location in the town at every hour, telling you exactly what is happening in that specific location at that specific hour. So you'll be able to refer back to that anytime the player is anywhere doing anything, and the same thing will happen every single day unless it is otherwise influenced by the players. Any townsfolk then who are interrogated about this procedure will try not to tell anything at first. Number one, because they're also incredibly ashamed of the things they have done in the past while in this time loop, and they don't really want to talk about it anymore. Some members of the town as well may have actually completely forgotten that they are in a time loop as their wills are being sapped. And those specific people who have lost and forgotten why they're here or that they're in a time loop are the first people who will start to go missing up at the shrine. But obviously, if they are pushed or threatened, they will let the players know about Farmer Dan's plan and that he has instructed them all to just repeat the same actions and explain to them why they are doing that. I've got different bios on all these people as well, and that might give you a better sense of why each of them are following these rules, but it's up to you in the end of the day to tell your players whatever you want to tell them, what these characters know and why they're doing what they're doing. But yeah, before running this game, obviously have a look through all the different NPCs and familiarize yourself with them so that you have a better sense of what they're going to be doing, what their characters and personality traits are like, and it'll just make it a little easier for you. I know there's a lot of them though, so best of luck, but I don't think it's too bad. I've made them pretty bite-sized. I also touch on this in just a little bit, but make sure that you tailor this game to your players specifically. If you want to get the most out of this, feel free to cut NPCs to insert new ones of your own in here if it's going to better tell a more personal story for you and your players, the characters specifically that they are playing. But obviously, eventually, after enough exploration, your players are eventually going to discover the creator of this time loop. Now, room number 3 is the setback, and this is where they finally come face to face with the creator themselves. And this creature, whoever they might be, is going to be incredibly powerful and will, ideally, wipe out the entire party in that moment. But should the players still manage to defeat the creator somehow, still have them wake up the next day and repeat the same day over and over again. Perhaps maybe not just killing this person will end the time loop, perhaps something else has to be done. And we're going to go into more detail after I finish covering all these different rooms as to who the creator might be, who your villain or villains in this game might be. But ultimately, in the end of the day, I recommend that you create a villain that suits you and your game, but make sure that their challenge rating is incredibly high. Make them near impossible to defeat for your players. But also, your players won't level up in this campaign. Every single day that they start a new day, have them lose any experience they gain throughout the day to just show them that any progress they make on themselves is lost. So now they know they can't go out into the woods and grind 100 rats and slowly get stronger and face the boss. They need to figure out how to do all this in one day. And with all of this information on the boss, the fact that they're incredibly powerful, really hard to defeat, they're going to have to come up with some creative solutions as to how to defeat them, which leads us to room number 4, our climax. So after making their preparations, after trying to uncover as many different secrets about this time loop as they possibly can, they will now eventually face this big villain, the creator. And when they finally do face this creator, have some elements of the time loop change, or perhaps have the time loop end entirely and let the players know that it's over, so that when they go and face this boss, they know this is their last chance and they have to get it right. There is no second chances after this. For my own game that I ran, I used a Fey Lord called Anatole, who actually had his body destroyed, and more on that as well at the later on in this video. I'll go into more about the NPCs and villains that I used, but essentially he had no body. He was recreating his body, and this spell was designed to help him rebuild his body. After one day he would grow a pair of eyes, after another day he would now have teeth and be able to talk, and slowly he would grow limbs, and eventually he would be able to move around to take another NPC and use them as a host for his new body. When this eventually happened, the time loop ended, a whole new day began, and the players woke up knowing that Anatole was out there. He needed to be destroyed, but they now only had one chance to do it. If they died here, that was it. And then come the end of this adventure, should the players succeed or fail, the final room of this 5-room dungeon will still have to be explored, and that is the conclusion. So now, should the creator be destroyed or banished to whatever realm it once came from, it's now time to ask your players what happens next. Number 1, what happens to these townsfolk? I think this is a really interesting thing to explore, to delve into these NPCs the players have gotten to know, who have grown accommodated to knowing what the next day brings, but now they have to learn how to live their lives not knowing what happens tomorrow. Can they continue living normally like that? And I suppose more importantly, after all is said and done, ask your players, how have they changed? How are they coming away different from this? But one question you probably still have is, who is the creator and what should I use for the creator in my own games? And as I mentioned, I think only you as the DM and with the players that you have will know who it should be. And because of the fact that I want to make this adventure for any TTRPG, for any players of any level, it felt wrong to add a set stat block and a set villain for this adventure. It really needs to be decided by you, because I really believe that your villain of this story should have some pre-existing relationships with your characters beforehand, with the players themselves. Perhaps the great spirit that cursed these lands is the warlock patron of one of your players. Or perhaps they were a mentor figure of the rogue or the fighter, being this great spirit of disguise and illusion. When I ran this adventure, the creator was actually just one of 2, technically 3 villains that I had planned to run. But if you already have an idea for what kind of villain you would want to use for this adventure, go ahead and use that and skip past this next segment where I'm going to talk about the villains that I used in my adventure when I ran this specific game. Yeah, timestamp is right here if you want to skip past this on to the next segment of the video. But yeah, let's dive right into what I used. It might give you some inspiration along the way, but like I said, make sure that you're creating a villain that suits your players specifically. Also, do note actually that what I'm going to be talking about here is going to be a little bit different to the document that I read. When I wrote up this adventure as a document a few months back now, I hadn't run this game yet, but I've run it now. And so what I'm going to tell you is actually going to be a unique take on the document. So this is going to be a bit of a different story. The document is still very valid, still great ideas in there. but yeah, it's just a bit different now that I have run this game. Okay, so I just didn't want to confuse you. But for me, the first villain I came up with was a creature called the Naki. Based on Nordic mythology and folklore, this guy was once a human called Nen. And the original concept was to have the Naki be the original corrupted spirit that the people of Toki Village used to worship. But after doing some additional writing and getting some additional information from my players about their characters, I actually went ahead and changed this almost entirely just before starting the main campaign. I scrapped the idea of the villagers defiling the shrine entirely and instead added in this new being called Anatole, who was a Fey Lord. The story goes that once upon a time, every so often, young girls of the village would go missing in the nearby woods, lured by enchanting music and beautiful lights, promising excitement and a jolly good time. This was Anatole's domain, the court of strings within the Feywild. Here he would lure young girls to dance in a great circus of festivities where they could dance to their heart's content. Should their feet break and bleed from too much dancing, no problem. Anatole would happily replace them with new porcelain feet that would never wear or tire or break. Should your legs or arms give out, he would give them the same kind of procedure and support them with strings that he could puppeteer to ensure that you could continue having fun. And this would continue until only a porcelain marionette remained who possessed no will of their own, willingly giving up their free will to their lord. But should any girl try to leave, then Anatole and his collection of marionettes would hunt them down and spill their blood with gleeful smiles across their face. Everything would become a game, and every moment was a party worthy of grand celebration. The burden of decision would be lifted here as your memories of your past life were given up. Here you could feel special, with your life's journey carefully laid out before you. You need only dance and enjoy this moment. The man who would later become the Naki was called Nen, and he used to live here in Toki Village, and he was one of the fathers who lost their daughters to this woods, to Anatole. And it was in this moment of desperation that this man, Nen, made his way to the shrine, the protector of this town. He went and he sought help from the spirit that lived there, and he asked the spirit for the power to take revenge on Anatole, but the spirit refused. And so Nen, in anger, drowned the spirit, and in so doing gained a skewed version of that spirit's powers. Instead now of what that spirit used to be able to do, which was bless people using the waters of this pond and grant them small blessings, small little miracles, little motes of their power. Instead, in the skewed, bastardized version of this powers that Nen received, he could now gain power himself through drowning people. And so with this new power, he marched on Anatole's domain and drowned as many of his marionettes as he could, knowing full well that they all used to be children of his village once. But he needed power if he was to face Anatole. And power he got, and almost enough power to wipe Anatole out completely if it wasn't for the quick reactions of Anatole's marionettes. They managed to sweep him away to a hidden location just before Nen could deliver the final blow. And Nen, now absolutely exhausted after that battle, after his enemy finally got away, had to retreat back to that same pond in Toki Village to recuperate his strength through drowning unfortunate members of the town. And now Anatole, vulnerable, without a body, with nothing but his marionettes remaining, began to hatch a plan. He sent off his marionettes, cut their strings, and asked them to use these magical strings to string up the people of different villages nearby. This would create a weave, a spell that would start to siphon away their willpower and give it to him, help him become stronger again, regain his strength, and very soon as people would come to him and become new marionettes of his army, he would take pieces of them and rebuild a new body of his own. One of my players would eventually play as a bard who was drowned by the Naki, multi-classing then into their warlock. Another would become a warlock who, unbeknownst to them, would be carrying Anatole's soul with them in a lantern they hung from their staff. We then had another player who was a doll, tailor-made by Anatole to become his new vessel, once he had gained enough power to take him over. And then finally, one of my players decided to play as one of Anatole's devoted marionettes, who would become our third antagonist of this adventure. And so the stage was set. Hanging from the staff of one of my players was Anatole, watching everything that took place. This same player belonged to a crew that had all tragically drowned in a shipwreck that had been manned by a captain known as Nen, a captain who they would then find loitering around the local inn of Toki village, casually drinking ale and tormenting each of the players simply through existing alone. He was the perfect red herring of sorts for this adventure, but was still a very prominent antagonistic force in his own right. I won't drag on now anymore with the details, but this was, without a doubt, the best D&D experience I have ever had in my life. And it was because this entire campaign was built around my players. Every single antagonist in this story was intrinsically connected deeply to all of my players, so every action they took carried so much weight. And unfortunately, you won't capture this lightning in a bottle that I managed to capture in my game if you directly copy these characters into your games, but you can reproduce it if you design your NPCs and villains around your characters in the same way. But I hope by telling this story, I've managed to spark some ideas for you, some ideas that you can grow your own from in the future to further enrich your games. And if you want to get your grubby little hands on this adventure, I only ask that you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and DMs, share this with your players if you dare. Players, share this with your DMs if you want them to run it. And after that, go off into the description. Down below, you'll see a little link for a Google Doc, and that is the adventure. Go enjoy it, have fun with it. It's totally free, totally for you, just to have some fun in the wonderful festivity that is Dungeon Jam tuber thing. What am I saying? Dungeon Jam. There we go. I said it. There we go. I leave the rest to you. Enjoy this adventure, and if you want some inspiration for some sort of character you could design for this specific adventure, go check out this video over here where I create an entirely new race for D&D called the Omen. Or if you want to use maybe a classless adventure, if you want to have a classless D&D experience with this adventure, go click this video down here. One of my players actually made a classless character for this campaign when I ran it, so it's perfectly viable. Go have fun. Oh, and then finally, absolutely, I need to thank all of my beautiful patrons who make this career absolutely possible for me, who make this my job. Thank you so much for supporting me and allowing me to do what I do. Without you, it could not be possible. So just, as always, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to support me and what I do, check out my Patreon. There's loads and loads of homebrews over there. Enjoy it, take a peek. There's loads of free stuff too if you want to check it out. And yeah, thank you so much, all my beautiful patrons. Goodbye.